Hello, welcome to a part of the masterclass video on the subtypes here, just taking on right here the three varieties of type sixes, who we call the skeptical troubleshooter. Do remember that if you want to go deeper in any of these, you can check out the section of this in your shock point book, the Enneagram and Burnout and Stress. Probably sixes are the most different between each of the subtypes. The only other one that might come close are fours with the emotional intensity of differences behind them. But sixes are kind of the famous ones with they're just real distinctive differences between them. For the self-preservation six, now for every six, there is this relationship to authority and how they are responding, reacting, dealing with the authority figures in their life, because this is where safety is going to be found or not found at this very deep, unconscious, even primordial level. So warmth is the way that self-preservation sixes show up. We've likened them to being, as it says, a little bit more like a rabbit than the bulldog of the sexual six or eights, perhaps in general. And if you're warm, then you're an ally. There is no enemy. And so their alliances, when you pass the trust test, for their trust test, they're going to be seeking their alliances for security and protection. They themselves will be trustworthy allies. They tend in their analytical part to be tuned into how the parts work with the whole much more even than their five neighbors who are narrower in their focus. It's interesting the way that the sixes are scanning, right? They're scanning for danger, what is out there on the horizon, what could go wrong. The self-preservation variety shows up with this warmth that you might be surprised about to think of in many head types. Their mantra is, we are friends, so we're good with authority. More of what you would think of as the stereotypical idea of what a six is. They used to be called simply the loyalist. Well, that's the social six. Their subtype name being duty. They are a little colder. They're aligned with doing the right thing because you're safe when you're doing the thing with authority. And they neither completely trust in others like self-preservation sixes do, nor in their own are they in trusting in their own self, the way that the intensity of the sexual sixes show up. They handle their fear by placating, pleasing something outside themselves, and they find safety in submitting to these prescribed social rules. I believe Naranjo called them sort of like Prussian-like, which I think he associated with being rigid and stiff and adhering to principle. You can see also how this type early on could be mistyped for a one for a variety of reasons. And finally, of the three subtypes of sixes, sort of the famous counter type is the sexual 1-to-1 6. And I think famous because, and maybe one of the real insights into understanding why subtypes are so important is to understand how very different a sexual 1-to-1 6 shows up, especially as compared to what you think of as a six. They turn against fear. So their way of protecting themselves is to be more of a bulldog than a rabbit. They're not quite like the eights. The eights might be bulldogs with real bite, but this bulldog is more bark than bite. And they go after fear to manage it so it feels less scary. They may misread social cues because of projecting threats and criticism where none may exist. This is true really for all sixes. And they often seek or try to get related to strong or beautiful partners, hence the name Strength Beauty. That is where they are making their alliances with those three types. So the famous counter type and very different ways of being with the sixes. So as you're thinking about how do you show up in burnout and stress, and you're maybe thinking of like, well, what type am I? Just be aware of the way that you can look. If you're a sexual six, you can look 8-ish. If you are a social six, you can certainly look 1-ish. Just keeping an open mind, holding some of these loosely as you really try to narrow in on your type and subtype.